So we just got the Mandalorian Season 3 behind the scenes Disney gallery, and I've got to say I'm a bit conflicted, because on the one hand it was great to get some insights from Dave Filoni, Rick Famuyiwa, Jon Favreau, some of the other creatives, seeing the Grogu puppet, seeing the actors, seeing the enthusiasm and the work that goes on behind the scenes. But on the other, it was very surface level, more like a commercial than a behind the scenes. There wasn't much depth and substance to it, so when I break down all the things I loved about it, it is going to be quite shallow. There were some great things regarding Ahmed Best, some looks at Jack Black and Lizzo, but nothing much on some more interesting elements such as Zeb Orrelios, or at the very least talk about the process of bringing Zeb into the show, what it took to do that CGI. They seemed to just skim past so many fascinating elements and it was kind of disappointing. Even the Coruscant sequences in chapter 19, there was a little bit of reference to Revenge of the Sith, but again, they seemed to skim past and get quite repetitive with some of the compliments. All I'm saying is there was much more care with season 2 and season 1 in the behind the scenes galleries, even the Book of Boba Fett. But let's focus on some positives. The ongoing commentary throughout everything by Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau gives you a good idea of what they were going for creatively speaking, and there's a certain cohesion as the seasons go on, as they look back and reflect, not just on what was in the third season, but also building upon plot points and themes that came before in the first two, not to mention the Book of Boba, which is also referenced quite a bit. So in this documentary, what is noteworthy? Well, there were quite a few things. I love the comments by Peter Ramsey, Rachel Morrison, an inside look of working on sets, the directing, and something prevalent throughout this doco is how do you build upon Mando and Grogu, now they're back together. A lot has been said about the way season 3 felt very different to the first two, how they didn't focus on Din and Grogu as much as Bo-Katan and other characters as well, but I would argue they did expand upon their dynamic in a big way. Grogu is now a Mandalorian apprentice, they tease the Mythosaur connection, more development for Grogu in terms of his flashbacks to Order 66, and I feel as though, and I know I've said this a million times, you've heard me say this over and over again, we've got to be patient. Jon Favreau before season 3 dropped did tell us that this is the middle installment. There is still so much story to come, and in a season dedicated to the restoration of Mandalore, it's kind of normal that Bo-Katan took center stage. Din and Grogu were snubbed to some extent, but not wholly. I really love the parts about Bo-Katan's story arc. Giancarlo Esposito more or less confirms Moff Gideon is dead, saying he always knew, being the bad guy of the show, that someday his character would have to die, but he does hope to return. It was fun seeing the Grogu puppet in IG-12, but my favourite part was Ahmed Best, the return of the king. Dave Filoni said that when they were deciding who was going to save Grogu, they wanted it to be someone in the so-called Lucasfilm family, someone who's waved the Star Wars banner before, and someone who is still a fan, and that for them was Ahmed Best. We spoke about this back when the episode dropped, but he's been through a lot, and Bryce Dallas Howard reveals she met Ahmed Best back during the prequel era. She was on set as a 16-year-old, and she met Ahmed during the days of George Lucas. What a great time for Star Wars that was. I know the prequels received a lot of hate back in the day, and Ahmed Best experienced a lot of hate to do with Jar Jar Binks and his role in the prequels, but for me, and so many other kids in the 90s and 2000s, that was our generation's Star Wars, and they were amazing stories. Now looking back at Mando 3, and this is interesting because we talk about Ahsoka so much, that is the big upcoming show that everyone's got their eyes focused on. We seem to have forgotten Mando already, and I know many fans were disappointed with the way it turned out, but watching this documentary this morning reminds me there were so many great moments, so many good episodes too. The Mines of Mandalore, the Mandalorian battle sequences, the Mandalorian designs, the creatures, Paul Sun-Hyung Lee's Carson Teva, the input of Phil Tippett, the reunification of the homeworld. There were some great things in season 3. They really did subvert our expectations and our fan theories, and that's okay. And one great example is Kelleran Beck. That is a choice very few fans would have guessed, but I do think it's so appropriate. While we theorized Jocasta Nu, Mace Windu, before Tales of the Jedi came out we said maybe Yaddle, but of course now she's dead. And don't worry guys, I will be making more Yaddle videos. I do make them from time to time, but I think Kelleran Beck was the right choice. It was so good to see Ahmed Best back, but also Kelleran is a great character for this situation, someone who's very good with younglings and Padawans, and they didn't step on the toes of reviving a dead character, because imagine if it was Samuel L. Jackson as Mace Windu. Of course there are some fans, myself included, who think he survived, but would it have been a good idea if they included him? I don't think so. There would have been a lot of fans angry about that decision, and then you have to explain, where's he been all this time? Has he been in hiding? What's the story? Why did he not help Luke in the rebellion? So many questions. So I do think Jon and Dave made the right call here. What do you guys think? It was so cool to see him wield his lightsabers, and we know he's got martial arts training, so this was a perfect choice. And watching these, you realise just how much work goes into the shows. The casting, the costume design, CGI, creature design, everything. The visual effects, the practicals, the sound effects. So many talented people working on this. And in case you didn't notice, Dave Filoni was wearing an Ahsoka jacket. Really awesome stuff. Also, with things less popular in the show like Jack Black and Lizzo, it was really wholesome to see how passionate they are for Star Wars nonetheless. And behind the scenes, Jack Black is hilarious. They also showed that video he made pretending to be General Grievous. I thought that was so funny. I also think I underestimated Jack and Lizzo. You know, when the show dropped, I said, well, was this the best decision for Star Wars? Should they have done this? Well, it turns out they're the best casting for their role. The characters they play are literally so reflective of their own personalities. And the thing about Bombardier, the thing about Jack Black's character, is he's so what the kids call extra. He's over the top. And I know some fans had issues with the scene of the dinner table with all the aliens, the way these outfits looked, the planet of Plaisir 15, but the more I watch it, the more I see this behind the scenes, I'm starting to think, maybe it's fine, maybe sometimes we do need to expand our understanding of what Star Wars can be. Alright, so this bit's hilarious. And here we are, the behind the scenes watching it. No, he's brilliant, and I am a fan of Jack Black, I think, outside of Star Wars. My only issue with him in The Mandalorian Season 3 was, it really just took me out the show, temporarily at least. The first time he showed up, I was like, no way is that Jack Black, and of course, it was. I've watched the episode a couple of times since. It's still not my favourite episode, I will say that, it's not my favourite, but it's definitely grown on me a lot more than the first time I saw it. I do think with this singing, Tenacious D, his band, should do some kind of a cappella rendition of this. Probably wouldn't be safe for work though.
Because no take is the same. My goal was just to get out of the way.
Who wants to take on the champion?
So the interesting thing about this, and this is something I kind of thought about when I saw the episode when it dropped, is the different energy levels of various actors, because in that scene where you have Bo-Katan and Din Djarin talking to Bombardier and the Duchess, Jack and Lizzo, there is going to be a dynamic we haven't seen before, and it goes back to the fact that Season 3 felt very different to the other two. The first one was kind of more gritty and dark and intense, the dialogue was very specifically well chosen, and they didn't want to make Mando talk unnecessarily, he was mysterious, and in Season 2 he opened up a bit more, he removed his helmet twice, and in Season 3, we kind of returned to the first season, Din keeping the helmet on, redeeming himself in the waters, but then you get characters like this, ones which are more comedic. Some were saying you see these more in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and they didn't really feel Star Wars-y, but it was so fascinating to see Bo and Din, two otherwise more serious characters, interacting with two people who've got a good sense of humour. In the show they're witty, and that was fun. Seeing behind the scenes is definitely fun. Now say what you will about The Mandalorian and Disney Star Wars, but George Lucas's plans for what he was gonna do before he sold Lucasfilm would have probably been crazier. I think he loved this kind of thing. Taking vaguely human concepts like sports and other things, turning them into Star Wars-y concepts, sci-fi and space opera, and then going insane with them. And we saw that with the prequel trilogy, how different that was to the originals. So when fans say that when it came to TV shows he was planning to make, or if he had done his sequel treatment, if he never sold it to Disney, that it would have been different, or more in line with the originals and prequels, I don't think that's true. I think he would have made something wildly different. He was always up for experimenting with new things. So in a very weird way, I'd say this episode was kind of in line with something he'd do. Although of course, we can't say for sure. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one. May the Force be with you, always.